Hello, David here, and in this episode, we are going to cover all the details from beginning to end of business, bookkeeping, and cash flow. Mainly focus on bookkeeping. We're going to talk about cash flow as well, because that is the cream of making your business work. Literally, it's the cash flow that makes everything work in your business. More cash flow means more options means more opportunity means when you take on risk, it's not as big of a risk, which means you have more chances of growth. So all of that being said, welcome to another episode of this, and I am so glad I get to be with you today. All right, so this is what I'm calling episode 6. We'll see what that looks like. This is so grassroots right now. I have no idea where we're headed, where we're going, but we're trying this out. The questions I'm going to be answering in today's episode are this. As a freelancer, as a small business, as a medium-sized business, as someone just starting out as a freelancer, why is bookkeeping so important to understand? We really that's like more of a statement, but we're going to answer the question of what is bookkeeping and why is it important to understand? Number 2, we're going to talk about Bench. This is a hard affiliate link with Bench, but I absolutely love their service. I use their service and I love their service. And I want to emphasize that their service has stuck with me between so many different levels. And so I'm going to explain that process to you. Just starting out, going through COVID, them giving me a refund, partial refunds, other things that have made Bench just an experience of a lifetime that I would really highly suggest. What they do handle and what they don't handle, again, this is a huge plug on Bench, is going to be the third part, is what do they handle and what do they not handle? When I first started with them, I was a little upset because I didn't understand how this worked. But once you have a good grasp of how all these pieces work together, it helps you take that next step. And it's actually really nice how they're set up. Number 4, what other services do you need outside of a bookkeeper? Legal, CPA, those types of things. We're going to get a little bit into that. Number 5, I'm going to just recommend 2 or 3 resources, books I recommend, resources for accounting that I think are just good to know. Not accounting books. If you want accounting books, go to college, go to any college. There are probably stacks of huge accounting books that cost $5 because those books get dated quickly. Finally, number 6 is investing. What does investing look like as a freelancer, small business, or if you're just starting out, a way to invest? This isn't a full conversation around investing. And as always, when you talk about investing, bookkeeping, CPA services, this is not legal advice. This is not financial advisement. This is not anything professional. This is my own opinion. And so when you engage with this, just know that it is at your own risk. Disclaimer over. Okay, cool. And I will say this from the top of the episode to the end, there are affiliate links in the show notes or in the description below. So if you are connecting with this for the first time and you see that, you will see there are some benefits to the links below, which we'll talk about more in a second here. As we get started here, so let us begin. First and foremost, as a freelancer, as a small business owner, as a medium-sized business owner, as an artist, as a photographer, why is bookkeeping so important to understand? And this is it. Bookkeeping is critical to understand because if you have worked primarily under the W-2 model, which means you get a paycheck every 2 weeks from your employer and the taxes are already taken out. Basically, if the taxes are already taken out, they've already done all the math for you. But in this case, if you're getting paid, but then you have to file your own taxes and then pay your own taxes where there's no deductions inside that payment. So the client pays you $1,000 or $12,000 or whatever number in between, and there are no deductions that go to the government. The government still needs their money to keep everything legal. So why is bookkeeping so important? Because simple numbers, if you make $100,000 in a year and that's your revenue, you brought in $100,000 as a 1099 contractor, you bring $100,000, you're going to get taxed at about 20 to 30% for that $100,000. So you're going to pay roughly $20,000 to $30,000 worth of taxes. $20,000 to $30,000, that's a car worth of taxes that you're going to give to the government. Now, if you do your deductions right, let's say you spent $30,000 to make that $100,000, which could be on your own car, which could be on camera equipment, gear, your computer, your phone, whatever devices you need to operate. And that's where this gets really important. Whatever you need to operate. Well, you're actually only going to get taxed at the $70,000 mark. So, because 30,000 of that was deducted, and that's what a bookkeeper keeps track of. The bookkeeper to me is one of my favorite people because the more they do their job, the better they do their job, the more I keep in my pocket. And so, with $100,000, you've spent $30,000 to operate the business. You're getting taxed now 20 or 30% on that 70,000. Still going to be a big number, but it's going to be a lot less than getting taxed on the $100,000. And that works in any case and scenario. And it only gets multiplied further and further when you get into other types of investment properties, how you earn income, all these different things. It starts to have its own life. And so that's a very basic example. But as a freelancer, as you're starting out, this is the most important thing you need to know. The more deductions you have, primarily, given all other things are equal, the more deductions you have, the less you're going to pay in your taxes, federal and state taxes. Now, just to kind of throw this in there as it's a conversation piece, I tried to buy a home in 2018. I tried to buy a home in 2019 last year as an investment property. In 2018, I did my deductions really well. So it looked like I only made $13,000. In reality, it was my best year ever financially, but it looked like I had only brought in $13,000 because of all the deductions, because I invested a lot into my business and it showed out over the years. But when I went to try to get a loan, the banks were like, dude, you make no money. And I had a negative loss from 2017 to 2018 on my taxes, which did negatively affect me. And I was unable to secure a loan the way I wanted to. And so I never ended up getting that house. Lo and behold, today, I think it was a blessing. I know it was a blessing. But with that said, there are other factors worth considering. And that's where CPA comes in hand, which I'm kind of skipping ahead, but just want to throw that in there, is that deductions are really important, but it's good to know how all these things work together. First and foremost, the main thing is you want a professional to be able to organize your deductions for you so that you're not sitting there stressed about it. Now, when I first went to Bench, that was the first service I used, I had just paid off $20,000 worth of debt, just shy of $20,000 worth of debt. So spending an extra $150 a month on a bookkeeper, $120, $150 a month, was ridiculous in my eyes. It felt as if that was way too much money to be spending on a bookkeeper. But truthfully, bookkeepers offer this service where if they do their job right, everything plays together nicely, which is they're going to make sure you pay less in taxes. And I had to just quickly come to the realization, even though I didn't know if my business was going to thrive or if it wasn't going to work, that was a big question in my head. I remember saying, is this actually going to even work? Am I going to start paying $120, $150 a month for this service in a few months? It's not going to be making money and I'm paying for a service that I don't need. And it was just all complicated for me. And in my head. And I am just so happy I said yes. By them doing my books, they helped me save so much money. And I really had to come to the realization, I'm going to pay $1,500 a year for this bookkeeping service. But on the flip side, I'm going to spend, to really think about it, right? I'm going to put $1,500 down for this accounting service, but I'm going to save more than $1,500 on my taxes. And that's just the truth of it because it's done properly and it's done right. I had a friend suggest this. He said, why don't you just learn QuickBooks, spend an hour, go to YouTube, learn QuickBooks and do it yourself. And I think that's an idea that could work if you're really starting out, but I highly don't recommend it. If you don't want to become the accountant, don't do it. Hire someone to do it. And that's why, number 2, we're going to talk about right now, why I use Bench. I'm going to cover 3 reasons why I use Bench. Number 1, Bench comes through. They are a team of experts, highly trained experts. This is the beauty of hiring a company like this. You pay a very competitive rate, $100, $150 to start out, $100, $150 a month. You pay a very competitive rate, and they are able to offer you a service as if you were paying 10 times that rate. And this is so powerful because they have professionals on their team that can audit really unique scenarios if need be on your behalf for no extra charge. They're not going to nickel and dime you. They're not going to come chasing after every little penny. They're going to be very clear about what the fee is to begin, what the fee is for the service. And at the same time, if you need some expert specialization help, you have a question that only they could answer with their experts on the team, they will come through. So number one, you're paying a very competitive rate, a very good rate for a very premium service. And I love things like that. It's the idea of over-promising and under-delivering. Secondly, another reason why I really, really love using Bench is that they are very thorough. They will go through all of your numbers in detail, categorizing everything for you and not waste any of your time. I probably spend less than an hour a month on my bookkeeping. I love very thorough services. I love services that are not just thorough, but very good at articulating thoughts about what's coming. So they can think, oh, this is set up like this, but it also affects this and it also affects that, which they could kind of put a sphere, a whole picture around your specific needs. This type of operation makes it so valuable, and it also is scalable. If the project manager or account manager that's on my account decides to leave or gets promoted, will they quickly replace that person, and the system flows flawlessly because everything is built internally to be very thorough quality checks along the way perfectly, which I absolutely love. That stuff just makes me so happy. That stuff just makes me so happy. And number three, this is probably the best part. I don't know if this would happen, but if everything else sucked, this isn't a reason to come to them. But with number one and number two, number three is that their software is amazingly simple. Amazingly simple. Everything is online. Everything is easy to categorize. Basically, what will happen is once a month, I will get an email saying, hey, we covered your books for the last month. Everything looks great. These are the things we didn't know how to categorize. If you could just go on the website and categorize those, that would be great. And if there's any other comments or things they need from me, could you just upload a statement or two? It's very easy to do. So for the categorization, you literally click on a link and it's so easy. It's built into the software beautifully. And then it'll just show you, these are the 10 items we couldn't categorize. Number one, it's this. It'll give you suggestions on what they think it could be. And then it goes from there to not just give you suggestions. It also then recommends, it gives you a space for an option if it's none of those options. It's very intuitive. It's very well built. And if you have a question about something, you could just ask your manager, your account manager. Also, it works really easy to upload statements. Now, I don't need to upload statements each month. It integrates directly, the software integrates directly with all my banks, which has been wonderful. And it makes it so easy for everything just to get uploaded automatically. Even one of my banks is a credit union that does not have funding. It's not like a Chase or Wells Fargo that has really well-developed systems. For the size of the bank, it has really well-developed systems. But at scale, it is just it's like a knockoff bank. Respect, you guys are great, to the credit union. But really and truly, it's so cool that they do integrate with Bench. And I think they're using another third-party tool that makes this possible, but it just works so well. With using Bench accounting, there's a few things you want to walk into the relationship knowing, which is number one, what they do, and number two is what they don't do. Number one, with what they do handle your books, so they'll keep track of your books. But what they don't do, number two, is they are not your accountant. So there's a difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant. And even there, I think there's a difference between an accountant and a CPA. The actual accountants would tell me if I'm right or wrong. There are 3 different levels to this, but just to be clear on what's most important, they're bookkeepers, they're not your CPA. So if you ask Bench, is it better for me to be an LLC for tax purposes? Is it better for me to be an LLC or a sole prop with the books I have? That's not their space for that advice. They have some nice blog articles they might point you to. They have some nice resources they might point you to. But their job is to keep your books. Their job is to make sure that every deduction that is possible to get deducted gets marked, checked correctly. And the most beautiful part, their delivery is on point. They deliver their projects with they deliver it so thoroughly. You get a very in-depth Excel sheet. They can connect with your CPA directly and send it to them directly as well on your behalf. They make the process so easy. So what they do handle is your bookkeeping. If you buy, let's talk about, we didn't really get into this earlier, but why is bookkeeping so important? If you buy software, that's a write-off for your company. If you buy equipment to film, like everything I'm using here, this is a write-off for my company. Your phone is a write-off for your company. Your car can be a write-off. Any equipment could be a write-off. Some items for your house could be a write-off. Some food could be a write-off. Snacks for the office. Part of your rent could be a write-off. If you get a co-working space, that could be a write-off. Anything that is work-related, meals that you talk about business, those can be a write-off. And the list goes on and on and on and on. There are so many things that could be a write-off as a sole proprietor or as an LLC. And then when you get into those different formations, business formations, which is where you need legal advice, your CPA could help you with that, but it's good to have legal advice set up those pieces. And I know that may sound like a lot. If you're just starting out, I know that may sound like a lot. What I did was I started with the bookkeeper. I had a bookkeeper for about 1.5 to 2 years before I had legal help me create the LLC to begin the S Corp. And my CPA, I was working with one CPA for a few years, and I just transitioned this year to a new CPA, which I'm really excited about because I'm also getting business advice as well from the CPA, which is something I was looking for. So it's really important to know that Bench's job is one job. It's bookkeeping. And if you're expecting them to do all of it, that could become a lot, or it could become overbearing. And Bench is always upgrading their services. They're always adding more to their services. So they do handle your bookkeeping. They don't handle your taxes. They don't handle your legal structure, but they do handle your bookkeeping. And so it's really important to know that all those pieces, though you're one business, all those pieces operate separately. Now, let's get real, all right? I've been real this whole time, but let's get real. Bench has dropped the ball 1 or 2 times on me. Very clearly, they have dropped the ball. One time was when they didn't deliver my final books for about 4 to 6 weeks. So I was patiently waiting. They said I was in the queue. And when it came time to it, my books just kind of got pushed to the side. Everybody else's got prioritized and mine just kept getting pushed to the side. The April deadline was looming and I went back to them. I said, guys, let's roll, show up. And they did. That's the best part. They did. When I mentioned that to them, they got back to me. The boss got back to me. Everyone came to try to resolve it quickly. They just basically said in a time like this, everybody who was really demanding got pushed to the top. And people who were just kinder and letting them do their work ended up getting pushed to the bottom, unfortunately. And they said that's a mistake and it shouldn't happen. It won't happen again in the future. And they worked quickly to resolve it, which I appreciate a lot. They took the responsibility on, and I think that's a great thing. The other major part was Bench recommended this company, and I'm not going to say their name just because I don't want to throw them under the bus. They recommended this company when the PPP loan came out. And I went on and I did the application. It was a really smooth process, really easy process. I was actually really impressed with how easy the process was for something so new. I didn't hear from that company for about 2 months. And then word came out that, to me at least, that the loan was going to close in just a few days. And so I had messaged the company, and that company did not do a good job of managing my application at all. So I reached out to Bench to notify them. I just said, guys, you probably shouldn't work with this company again. They've done a really lousy job of communicating over these last 2 months. A week before everything's due, they told me I am denied, but they won't tell me why I'm denied. And they're not, and I can't get a hold of their team. It was a really stressful process because there was a lot of money on the line that could have been useful to grow my business this year and all of that. And so we were going back and forth, and I hit up Bench. Literally, one of the VPs called me. Okay, so we're talking about a company, there's a few hundred employees, I would imagine. It's a pretty big company. The VP took out time in his day to make sure that I was getting the service that they had promised. He had talked to other people. He ended up calling the VP of this other software company And within that, by the end of that day, I was approved. Literally by the end of that day. I mean, it kind of tells me like, hey, I should have gotten approved earlier, but by the end of that day, I was approved. And that was so impressive. So a few weeks ago, my CPA said, oh, I don't use Bench. I use another service for bookkeeping. And he's like, he wasn't trying to force me to switch over, but he was saying, yeah, I prefer this software for bookkeeping. And I said, awesome, I absolutely love that. We're gonna continue with Bench, because Bench has shown up in really difficult moments to always show the right character. And I think that's what like matters to me most. There have been challenges, there have been problems. It hasn't been a perfect engagement, but Bench really does a good job for a small business to get this. What I said earlier, you could get this service where literally you could answer the most complex questions for a very nominal competitive rate. You wouldn't have to pay a CPA $500 an hour to get answers at this level. And for $150 a month, you literally get this person all year long to work with, to answer your questions, to be there, to make sure your books are getting taken care of and things are getting delivered right. So we've had this conversation about Bench bookkeeping and why I recommend Bench and all of these things, what they do handle and what they don't handle. But I do want to make one thing clear. As a freelancer, as a small business, as a medium-sized business, these are the key items that you're going to need in growing your business, which are going to be legal to develop the business formation. This is probably a step one, depending on where you're starting from. And especially if you're like a freelancer. Step one is it is good to really have a sense of where you want to go and what you're trying to build. And in most cases, as you grow, you're going to want to build some type of business formation, as that helps with tax liability and also protection against litigation. So those are probably the two main things that I think of. There's probably a list of other things that are beneficial in this way, but tax liability and any type of litigation, you protect yourself against any type of challenges or issues that may come up there with your product or service. So you're going to need some type of legal advice. I used a company from LA. They help creatives specifically. I believe it's called Counsel for Creatives. I'll put a link in the show notes or in the description talking about Counsel for Creatives. They are a wonderful service. I think I just did the LLC with them. Really smooth process, really clean system, really thorough system. They took care of everything. They answered all of my questions. They got the business formed. Everything. Really, really, really well done. And I was really impressed. So you'll need legal. You'll need the CPA is someone who is going to actually file your taxes. So they're going to put all the numbers in the right spots and make sure your taxes get set up properly and find that golden number that goes to that you're either going to be paying to the government or the government is going to be paying you back. Also, the CPA will help out with quarterly taxes if you are a freelancer and you are on 1099s. Rather than holding all the cash all year long, the government likes it if you do pay a bit of money every quarter for estimated tax payments that go out. So you may be paying some of it where later you'll get some back, or you may be paying some of it where it'll be a portion of the total amount that you owe at the end of the year. So legal, CPA, legal counsel, CPA, and then your bookkeeper. So those are 3 services. Currently, I used Counsel for Creators for the legal service. I use Bench for the bookkeeping, and then I use a local CPA for my taxes. Now, just before we continue and go on to this next section, I do want to say this. If you do sign up for Bench Accounting, there is a link below that will give you 1 month for free. That is $100 to $150, maybe even a little bit more dollars off of your account. It is an affiliate link, so I do get a kickback for that, and I do appreciate it if you do sign up for the service. But I would say if you sign up for the service, I so appreciate it if you use that link, because number 1, you'll get a month off, and number 2, I will get a kickback as well. Again, I would not be emphasizing this service if I did not really enjoy it. I have been using it for 3 to 4 years. I love working with them. They're so easy to work with, and I literally spend less than an hour a month on my bookkeeping. What else could you ask for? Literally, what else could you ask for? I spend less than an hour a month on my bookkeeping, and it gets done proper. Okay, so what other services do you need? Legal, CPA, We talked about a bookkeeper bench. I also say Robert Kiyosaki because a book like Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you've never read that, I heard that title so many times before. I said, I don't need to read that. That book changed my life. It for sure changed my life. So a few books I recommend, resources. I'm just going to name about, I think I have 3 here, and there are probably a lot more around finances, but in this case, I'm just going to mention 3 that I think are so important for finance just to get started, right? And they're not like deep accounting books of like how you change this to make this type of business structure. No, it's none of that. But it gets you in the right mindset to think about how to grow your business, how to grow money, because a lot of your business is surrounded by money. What we said in the beginning is the more money you have, the better you have cash flow, right? That helps lead to more opportunity, which leads to more chances of taking risks that aren't as big of a risks, which means more opportunities to grow the business. There's so many benefits with this. So talking about cash flow, 3 books I recommend. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. By the end of the book, you're probably going to want to buy your first home if you've never bought a home before. He talks a lot about real estate and the vehicle of real estate for making money, which I highly suggest. I'm no expert in it. I've seen some people around me win at that. My mentor at one point was buying over 15 homes, up to 15 homes a day in his prime, flipping homes. And also I work with someone who is very heavily invested in the mobile home park scene and owns hundreds and hundreds of mobile home parks and just started about 10 years ago from zero. And so there's a lot I've been exposed to. I don't have my own experience yet. I will one day, but in that process as well, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book that will teach you so much about how to think about money. And it really talks about the difference between value and cost and how you look at life. A lot of people who look at life from a cost basis are looking at how much things, literally the negative side of it. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's overpriced. Or I need the cheapest thing. Or I can't have something luxurious. And what he gets at is really some powerful tips and tricks, tools that you can use in just the way you think about money and how you process growing your money and growing your business. Another one I really love, mainly because of one idea in the book, actually two main ideas I took from the book. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So in this book, Ramit really talks about how to optimize your money, and he talks about it from the employee mindset. So he talks about it from the position as if you were working at a 9-to-5 company, how to really maximize what you have there, and then start maybe side hustles or other things like that to really supplement your income and to get to a point of what he calls financial independence and retire early. So those are that's like the pinnacle of it, right? The 2 things I took away from the book, I would say, are number 1, automate your investing, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Automate your investing. Get it onto autopilot, just have it working, check in on it every quarter, but don't overstress it, which I really like. Number 2, this is the important one, be lavish in the things you love and cut ruthlessly in things you don't. And what he means by that, I'll use a practical example. I personally love fragrances. I know, you can't experience it here on the screen or over audio, but I love fragrances. And mostly I love the experience of going to a fragrance shop and meeting someone who has a nose, you could say. And they just have so much experience. It's a bit like fine wine for wine connoisseurs. Fragrances, to me, the experience and going to different countries and being able to experience different fragrances and people teaching me about fragrance, I absolutely love that experience. However, it does cost money. So some of the fragrances I end up buying are a few $100s each. And I don't own 1 fragrance or 5 fragrances. I own like 50 fragrances. Now, let's be real. I only own about 10 bottles. Not only, but I own about 10 bottles that are in the range of 50 mil to 100 mil. And then I have a lot of smaller bottles because I got to the point where I realized I'm not going to use all this. Anyway, so I have a ton of fragrances, a ton of different fragrances, but it's something I love. And he talks about being lavish, going 10x on the things you love, but cut ruthlessly on the things you don't. And this type of thinking is actually really powerful because most the thinking around money is that you cut everything so that you could save for a day when you're too old to use it. It's like, and you're too old, you're too frail to use it. So now you could, you have more than enough money to travel the world, but your bones are weak and you're tired and you don't really want to go out. And when you get on a plane, it just makes you sick for 4 days. So horrible example. But if that's how you've been taught, this book will literally transform your thinking like that. I grew up in a household, very minimal spending. We only bought things on sale. We were always on the edge of poverty. It felt like I always had food on the table. I always had a place to sleep, but we never had extra cash to spend on extra things. Spending $100 on a meal for a birthday was extravagant. So growing up in a system like that makes you think, basically, it brings up this possibility that everything needs to be cut. And that one lesson of learning how to be lavish in the things I love, but cut ruthlessly on the things I don't, helped me really understand what I value and what I cherish and what I'm even building for and making it more enjoyable. It's so funny to see people with so much money, but they can't enjoy it. And so this book I highly recommend. That was a bit longer than any of the other books I'm going to talk about here, but I did want to break that down. The next book is The $1 Million One-Person Business. Make great money, work the way you like, have the life you want, by Elaine. I'm not going to pronounce her last name right. Pofeld. Elaine does a great job. And this is based on the 4-Hour Work Week, which is a book I always recommend, but I'm not going to get into that for saying necessarily recommending it for accounting advice in this case. But The $1 Million One-Person Business helps you see the potential to grow your business in ways that may seem unrealistic, where it may seem beyond measure. But this book is so thrilling to see companies grow. And you say, how's that possible? And it's because the world we live in with software, automation, internationally connected, globalization, simplicity of shipping, simplicity of airlines, like traveling constantly. It doesn't make the process easy to make a lot of money, but it does make it a lot easier. So being very clear there, it doesn't make the process easy, but it makes it a lot easier than 10 years ago, than 20 years ago, and definitely than 30 years ago. Finally, I want to touch on this a little bit at the end, and this is just the 6th point I have here, which is investing. What does it look like to invest? Now, with investing, there are so many options. What do you do to invest in the market? Now, this is just a little bit of a plug because I think these all, in my world, these all connect. But I'm also not going to go deep in like the psychology, the thinking, the systems, all the options. I'm just going to talk about one. I use robo investing, and I specifically use Betterment. And what I do is I have it automated where a few $100s every single week goes to my Betterment account. So basically, I'm putting that into the market every Monday. And so they call that dollar cost averaging, right? So sometimes the market is up, sometimes it's down. 2 weeks ago, it was at about 28, 29K on the Dow Jones. Today, it's the day before the election, and it's about 25K, 26K. It's a lot lower. People are nervous, I think, about the election. But with that said, autopilot your income. With the market, I'm going to say this, and it's so butchered. This is just a generalization. I read both of Tony Robbins' books about money. I read 4 or 5 other key resources about money. Ray Dalio's book, Principles. He doesn't talk too much about specifically money, but reading a lot of different resources on money and even investors kind of look and frame on money, it's really hard for the best of the best to predict the market. The best super forecasters still get it wrong the majority of the time. And so with that said, systems like robo investing that diversify your funds equally across the spectrum are some of the best because they consistently produce above the market. They're basically investing in index funds for you or ETFs for you. And so what I do is I basically put a few $100s in there every week. I highly recommend if you just want to start and you're like, I don't have that much capital, start. Betterment's perfect. The software is beautiful. The same reason I love Bench, I love Betterment. Their software is beautiful. You could start with, let's say, $10 a week. Just start with $10 a week. Get into the habit of investing. That's the important part. because you want to think about doing this for the rest of your life. If you've never done this before, now trust me, like when I grew up, we never even talked about investing, never even talked about it. If you want to get into the habit of investing, I highly recommend starting the system of investing. Before you have the funds to do it, start the system. Start with $10 a week. Start with $20 a week. Start with something that's very doable and practical. If you want to inject some extra cash in at the end of the month because you have it, do it. But if your possible budget only allows for $200 to $300 of money at the end of the month, and that might change because things might get pressed, the holidays may come, things like that, don't put $200 to $300. Just put $10, $20, $30 a week to start and get into the habit of constantly putting money in the market. It's not going to dramatically grow and you're going to see it go down because that's what the market does. But long term, it's going to get you into the habit. And the younger you are, as I always say, the younger you are, the better, because it gives you more years on the tail end of that money growing. So Betterment is a great option. Again, there's a link below that will get you started on Betterment and you can learn more about their services there. It is an affiliate link, so all disclaimers there. So in this episode, we have covered a few major things. As a freelancer, the way my system has worked is I started with bookkeeping. I started with Bench about 3.5 years ago. My business has now grown to produce over $500,000 a year. And at this point, I'm doing less and less work every single day as I train up my team to help produce these projects. But a bookkeeper, legal advice, a CPA, investing, these are all parts of the process. So when they say, oh, you're just a business owner that doesn't do much, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of responsibility that comes on the plate of someone who handles all of these things. And so in the final part of this video, in the final part of this audio, I just want to say this. This is really tough. It really, truly is tough. There are a lot of things that could get in the way of this working. And so what I recommend, keep it simple, and through the process, enjoy it. That's why I recommend starting with $10 in Betterment a week. If you start there, it gives you a place to start producing further and further and further and growing from there. And it's really to get the right mindset in the process. As you go through all these things, you're basically developing the mindset that I invest every week. You're basically developing the mindset that I have a bookkeeper. If you've never hired someone before, having a bookkeeper is a huge step in that direction. And doing that for 6 months, doing that for a year, investing in yourself in that way is so powerful. I think it's one of the most powerful things in just investing in yourself in that way. And so with that said, thank you guys for watching, listening. I want to ask you, what have been key elements of you growing your business financially? Has it been the bookkeeper? Has it been the CPA? Has it been the legal structure? What has it been for you? If you have any advice, any tips, I'd love to hear from you. And just to keep everything equal and even, we haven't talked about it much in this episode, but I do a lot of content for SEO, specifically for Squarespace SEO. So if you go to spacebaragency.com/newsletter, there you can learn about everything we're doing with the agency, how we help people, how we service clients, all of that. spacebaragency.com/newsletter. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.